Welcome to the Christian Conspiracy. I'm the Daniel, a Christian conspiracy theorist. So I thought I'd go through the Bible and take a look at some big themes as a conspiracy theorist. So I'm a Christian and I believe in God and I believe in the Bible and I believe Jesus is the mediator to God the Father and God the Father is the creator and he's the creator not just of heaven and earth but of existence itself. And he creates our minds and he creates our bodies and he also creates our souls. And we don't know that because we're disconnected from God and then nothing makes sense. And the Bible for a long time for me didn't make sense. And I even took my Bible as a kid and I threw it across the room and I said, this doesn't make sense to me. If this is real, make it real for me, God. That's what I said to God. I said, I don't get it. And then without the Bible, I started to get it. And then I read the Bible again. I was like, oh, this makes sense. So I'm going to go through that with you. And this episode is going to be the Genesis. It's going to be the creation story. And that's the one that puzzled me the most. And I'm just going to go through big themes in this podcast and explaining it through the Bible, but using what we know now as conspiracy theorists. We know the government lies to us, and we know the government lies to us in this grandiose scale for a reason. And I think that reason is to replace God, to become God. But first they got to hide God. And they do that through their pictures and through the story they give us. And it's been going on since the beginning. It's been going on since the fall. Now we're going to read the creation story, and the creation story is in two parts. Now this one is just going to be the first part of the creation story itself, the Genesis 1. Going to go into Genesis 2 a little bit because it's still telling the first creation story, and then right away it tells the second creation story. And the second creation story is the fall of man and how man fell and creation fell. It fell right away. God creates the heaven and the earth, and then he creates humans, and then we fall. We separate ourselves from God. Now, you have to understand the nature of God's creation to really understand this. God is not in his creation. His creation came from him, but it's its own thing. God's seed beams his seed to the creation, and then it's its own thing. It's of its kind. And you're going to see this all the time in the Genesis story. He's going to talk about of its kind. And because of silly science, we think the earth was created in 7 literal days and things like that. It's not. It's not 7 literal days. It's 7-dimensional fields. When it says day, it's talking about a dimension. It's talking about a connection of space and time. It's talking about a connection of energy. And that's what a dimension is. Now, they take dimensions and they put them up in the sky and they call it a universe. Everything is right here. And we know that through flat earth. We know that geocentrism is the earth is the center of everything. The earth is the center of existence. Existence means to appear. And we appear out of a God's energy and out of a God's mind and out of a God's system. And then it breaks because we don't recognize God. We don't recognize the creator. We want to be the creator, and then we use the creation to do that. And then, boom, you got pictures of universe. Boom, you got pictures of earth. Boom, the earth is in the sky. The earth comes from itself, and it mutates into a host for life, and then that host for life comes out of animals, and out of animals comes humans. It goes from primitive man to educated man to evolved man to God man to spiritual man, and they do it through death. And out of the death and out of the chaos rises the new species. That's evolution. And there's no proof of that. There's absolutely no proof of that. Try to go find a evolution museum. Go to try to find missing links in your museums where you have fish to mammal. They just don't have any. They have fossils, which are just things stuck in mud, which is more proof of a flood than anything. And then they say that's the record of the missing links. That's the record of man mutating from a fish. From fish to mammal, from mammal to conscious being to human. And it doesn't really make sense. And the Bible does make sense if you understand it properly and you understand that it's not always literal. The Bible's not always literal. In this case, it might actually be a poem. This might actually be a poem. And it's also interesting. Genesis is called the books of Moses, but Moses dies in the books of Moses. So Moses most likely didn't write Genesis, and Moses might not have been a real person. And that's fine. And Christians go crazy, and especially Protestants. They can't handle allegories and they can't handle stories. King David may well have written Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Jews used those books, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and the Psalms of King David, and it was also their king. So that makes a lot of sense that maybe he wrote them. He was a poet, he was a writer, he was a musician, he was also a warrior, and he's telling the story of God. Now, Christians adapt those stories of God, and they believe that. And I do believe it too. I do believe these stories, and it also makes more sense, and it actually makes it more real understanding it this way. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to read it, and I'm going to explain it verse by verse. But we're going to see here that the day means a dimensional field. And we know this because of the number. The number is explaining the dimensional field. A dimension is a point of contact. A number is a word for a point of contact. 0 is not nothing. That's a little confusing one. 1 is something. 1 lives in 0. So 1 is just a dot on a piece of paper, and 0 is the piece of paper. Now, they use universe. We use existence. You do have to have a being. You do have to have a power source. But then again, you're going to see how God is outside of this creation. He is sitting on his throne, powering it, most likely, and we do have to recognize that, and I believe we could recognize that. And you're going to see that in the Bible. You're going to see using blood magic and connecting through God through pieces of the creation. Now, Satanists will connect through deities, through blood magic, and they'll do the same thing. Water is another object that is both spiritual and physical. Water has gas, it has liquid, it has solid. So does blood. It has all 3 building blocks of life in it. And we're going to see that God was hovering above the waters. It doesn't say he created the waters. It doesn't exactly say how he created what he created. It's saying he created the dimensions, and he's outside of the dimensions. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So he doesn't create the waters. That's the piece of paper. That's 0. God's not saying he's 0. God is God. You can't know the answer to that question. You can't know the answer to the question, where does God come from, and who is God, and how did God create himself, and does not God know he's created? You can't know those answers. Now, I believe God created us and created things to know he exists. I think he could know he exists, or he wants us to know he exists. And he says that in the Bible. And people have a really hard time with that. That's a God. That's a creator. And you are not that. And if you can get that, if you can take your spirit and you can get rid of that wanting to be God, wanting to be creator, you can have a great life, but you can also see things and understand things much easier. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And in the evening and the morning was the first day. So that's the first dimension. But the first dimension is really hard to talk about without the second dimension. They kind of live together. He kind of alluded to that fact with day and night. Now, people are going to say God is dualistic. And he is dualistic, but he's also triunal. And his creation is a 10. It's not just 1, 2, it's 1, 2, 3. And then 4 is time. 4 is, we're going to get into that with the firmament. And then 5 and 6, that's us, that's the shadows. That's also 2-dimensional too, because it reflects evenly. And then 7 is God. That's all the points with a point outside of itself. I do a thing on my channel called The Shape of Numbers, where I'm explaining the sacred geometry in a geocentric sense. And I think that's what it is. It's not a literal day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So water is a two-dimensional substance again. So we got a two-dimensional substance. I got a two-dimensional plane above us. We got a two-dimensional plane that we sit on. Water has no height. Water has depth and water has width. But it's the container of the water that make up water's height. Water is just an expanse. It's just an eternal plane. And God made the firmament, and he divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So God's the beginning and the end. He's the Alpha and the Omega. But the creation is then like God. It's 1 and 2, it's existence itself, but he won't let you know what that existence is. He won't let you know where it lives. It doesn't live in outer space. It lives in a God's mind. That's what it's saying. It's saying, I created this, and I created it like this. I created it with a layer, and you live inside that layer. You live inside that realm. You live inside those dimensional fields. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth. In the gathering to gather the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And God brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Now that's the third dimension, height, depth, and width. So God creates a shape. He gathers the waters. Was it a tree? I think so. Now, we're going to get into this later with the Garden of Eden and the fall. But I do believe that there is a mountain in the center, and then the North Pole, and the mountain in the center with the sun and the moons creates the axis mundi and creates the electrical field that then move the sun, moon, and stars that then create our memories and create our calendar. Now, under the earth, there is a system as well. And there is another dimensional field under the earth, and that interacts with the sky above too. There's 3 levels of earth, if you will. Heaven being the top, earth being the middle, and then the lower level that they would call Atlantis, Agartha, Middle Earth. That is the plane we live on. Now, the border of the earth, is it islands? Is it an ice wall? The answer is we don't know. We don't know what is outside this third dimension, but it is interesting that God doesn't make mountains. It doesn't say God makes mountains. Now, it says he makes herb and trees and carbon. When you look into rocks, it turns out they're petrified trees. So, and there's different kinds, that is true. And there is volcanoes and there is lava and there's something coming up. And there's some things that we quite haven't comprehended yet. We do need to go under the earth. We do need to go there. Now, I think when you go there, you're in a different dimension. And there might be like a screen and a shadow in front of you. But I think you'll see 2 dimensions and you'll be able to see the skies above. And everything will make sense. We probably are in some sort of cube, some sort of faceted shape. And it is impossible to know where that cube lives. It lives in a electrical connection in a god. I think that's clear. And God said, let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. So that's our clock. That's the sun, moon, and stars. That's a fourth dimension. That's a fourth vanishing point. You cannot connect 4 dots on a piece of paper. You can only connect 3. You can't have the 4th dot touch the other 3 points. You can draw a circle around it, and the sun and the moon and the stars work that way, but you can only see it from the dot on the paper, from the plane. And then it's a plane itself. And the sun, moon, and stars are in the waters of that plane, creating that clock, creating a way for us to archive time. Now, what we do in time is just manipulate value and distribute value. That's what we become obsessed with. And we'll get into that more with the later episodes. First, we just have to understand what things are, and then we'll understand what we're doing, and that's all we're doing. We're taking electrical connections from the brain, from objects, and having emotions. And we're doing it for selfish reasons. And you're not supposed to do that. But it is inevitable that you do it. And it's called pride, and it's what broke this whole thing. And but it said it was created good, and that's why it's saying it this way. It's a dimensional field, and it's electrical connections to a God, to have a worship service. To worship just means time and energy, to beam it to a God. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God said, let them in the firmament of heaven to give upon the earth. And God said, let them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. So that's why he's calling it 4. 4 is out of 2 from 3, and you can't see it all at once. And you have the dualistic aspect of it, and then you have your perspective of it, but you're not that creator, and you're just a reflection of light from a reflection of light from a creator. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly in moving creatures that have life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth and upon the firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And he blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. So God creates animals on the 5th day. The 5th dimension is man's ways, and the 5th dimension is and the 6th dimension are shadowing your desires. And when you do that selfishly, it reflects animals and it reflects deities. This is where the Masons and the people that take ayahuasca and DMT and other occultists have tapped into. A lot of the cartoons will show this stuff, and they're showing the talking animals and things like that. And we're going to get into that with the fall, with the talking animals. When you try to recreate the creation, one thing that happens is you reflect God's creation. Now, on top of that, people might have cloned God's creation, and some of God's creation might be altered from the seed. The seed might have animals that didn't come from God's original seed, that were changed a little bit. That dinosaurs are that in people's mind. Like that's why the elites were bold enough to create the dinosaur hoax, because I think they did it with reptiles. I don't think reptiles were in part of God's original creation, but it does, and that's where the Nephilim may have spliced that. But we'll get into that with the fall. But there is a 5th dimension that conspiracy theorists know about, the quarter, that eagle on the quarter, that's a deity. There's lizards. There's these different deities, and they live in these shadow lands. I've seen it. I've gone to the fifth dimension unwillingly. I've gone there through people doing satanic ceremonies on me and kidnapping me and things like that. Other people have talked about it as well. You go there when you sleep. You go to the fifth dimension. You go to the Shadowland, and that's where we are created. We are created in this thing where we can only reflect what we see. We can reflect the opposite of what we see, or we can reflect what we see. And it does live in an order, and it lives in an objective realm. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth." And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth a living creature after its kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after its kind." And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after its kind, and the cattle after its kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after its kind. And God said it was good. And God said, "Let us make man after our image." So God creates beasts on the sixth day. He also creates humans on the sixth day. He creates mammals on the sixth day. He creates birds and fish and whales on the fifth day. God said, "Let us make man out of our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creep upon the earth." And God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them. Okay, so we're going to learn in Genesis 2 a different story, but that's a really important verse. So this is saying God created everybody. He creates man and female. Did he create everybody all at once? Does he create the first generation all at once? He tells the story of the fall of man through one family, and he tells it in a way where God creates the man and then he creates the female. I don't know. I think this is more he just creates everybody, and then that story is about the fall and the relationship between men and women and how they are different and created different. That I'll save it for that episode. But we are the gardeners of this earth. We are mammals, and we are part animal in a way. We're going to learn in Revelation the mark of the beast. Our genome is we are not connected to animals. We don't come from animals, but we are created similar like animals. But God breathes life into our souls, and so God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him. Male and female, he created them. We are recreators. We are not creators. God is creator, and then we can recreate. And we are the managers, and we are the gardeners of this creation. And we are separated from the animals, and we don't come from the animals, but we are animal, but we are created on the sixth day like the animals. And we reflect God's image, but we do not get to then have our images reflect created things. We have to regenerate our seed. We have to cultivate the seed. We have to go through a process to make things, and the things we're making are already made. We can't make anything that wasn't already made. And that's the whole conspiracy that people are trying to trick you with, that you can and you can't. And that's what the creation story is saying. And that's what reality just tells you. You just can't do it. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish, and over the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which it is fruit of a tree yielding seed to you. So it shall be meat. So God creates the earth, and he gives us a home, and he gives us food. He calls the food meat. He calls the fruit meat. Was the fruit different? Was that word meat means protein. That word meat means not sugar. That word meat was sustaining us for food. And we don't need to trade for food, water, and shelter. It came from trees. Now, I believe those trees were giant. I believe those trees were as big as mountains. We'll get into the eating of the fruit and in the next episode. It is hard to talk about the creation without talking about the fall, because we see everything through the fall. We can't see these giant trees. We can't see this fruit that was like meat. There's two types of food in this world. There's sugars and there's proteins. There's sugars and there's fats. Proteins and fats are the same thing. Everything else is a sugar. Our diets are primarily sugar. They're saying, oh, don't eat meat, don't eat meat, don't eat meat. These fruit was like meat. That's why it's saying the word meat. And it sustained you, and it's all you needed. And it was perfect. It was good. And every beast of the earth and every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth on the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Now, it's hard for us to understand that word good, because everything we have and we see is bad. Everything we do is hard. And we have to use a system. We have to use a system of government. We have to use a system of engines. We have to use a system of fuels. We have to use a system and manage time to get the most basic food, to protect us from the sun and protect us from the rain. If you don't have a house, you're going to be way too hot in the summer, and you're going to be way too cold in the winter. It's going to be miserable. God just said it was good. There was trees, and there was a canopy, and they were probably giant. It was just way, 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 way different. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the sixth day, God ended his work, which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God had created. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created in the day of the Lord. God made the earth and the heavens. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created in the day of that Lord. In the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Boom. So right there, he's saying, these are the generations of the heavens. God made heaven and earth in a generation. He made heaven and earth in a dimension. He made it not in 7 days. He made it in generations. The seventh day is a seventh dimension, and it is a point of connection that is outside all of the other six. So if you take 7 points on a piece of paper and you draw connection points with lines, you're going to have 1 point that's different than the other points. The other points are going to be the same angles, and then you're going to have one that's a different angle. With 5, you have all the same angles. With 6, you have all that are the same, and then sometimes 2 can be the opposite of the same. With 3, you have two same angles and 1 different angle. With 1, you have the same angle. And with 1, you don't have any angle. But you do have 2 things. With 7, you have 1 that's outside. Now, I like to add 8 as a time loop, 9 as a power grid, and then 10 is back to the beginning, 1 and 0, 0 and 1. And I call that the 10 dimensions of heaven. or the shape of numbers. There's also another great YouTube channel called Imagining the 10 Dimensions, and they take a geocentric point of view with dimensions as well. But everybody else, when it comes to dimensions, they put them up in the sky, and it's just confusing. And it makes a lot of sense from a geocentric point of view, from an Earth-centered existence. It is life itself. It is existence itself, and it lives in your mind, and then your mind connects to objects. Your mind connects to energy. Your mind connects to light. Your mind connects to what you see, what you taste, what you hear, what you then feel. And the mind can be persuaded, and the mind can go off in different directions and then be confused. That's what the ball earth does. It confuses your brain. And they say that the earth was created billions and billions and billions of years ago, and then it generated from a black hole, and then out of that black hole, it got the properties to sustain life, and then that life then morphed into a host for life, and then out of a puddle of water came a fish, and then that fish turned into a human, and then that human became sophisticated over time. The Bible's saying, no, it was created by a God, and it was perfect, and it was good. In Daniel, the book of Daniel, Daniel's interpreting a dream for King Nebuchadnezzar, and in the dream there's a giant tree, and King Nebuchadnezzar is the host of life for that tree. Well, what he's saying in that dream is the earth was created like a tree where it had food, it had shelter, it had water. Your home was on the trees. Your home came from the trees, and everything, there was no bad weather, and there was no need to get food. You could just walk outside and you could just go over to the tree and grab a piece of food. You wouldn't get sunburned. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. You could probably levitate. You could probably fly around, and you could just shoot energy around as long as you weren't doing it for bad, because you wouldn't do it for bad. You weren't distributing value. And then a king came along and cut it down and stole it. Or maybe God had already done that. We're not too sure about that. And then distributes the life of that tree. But first and foremost, they don't let you know about that. They don't let you know about that creation. They don't let you know about the Garden of Eden. They don't let you know about this perfect creation. And it most likely is in a dimensional field. It is created in 7 dimensions with a God connected to it. But yes, he is outside of it. And because of that, we won't recognize him because we want to steal it from him. And it's pretty clear that's what he's saying in the Genesis story. It's not 7 literal days. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's absolutely silly. It takes about 40 years for a tree to grow. I've planted a bunch of trees in my life, and after 40 years, they're about as tall as they're going to be. And especially into Genesis 2, when he's wrapping up the creation story, and he says, these are the generations of the earth and when they were created. In the day that the Lord God, he made the earth and the heavens. So he's taking responsibility for creating them. And the thing about dirt is dirt just looks old. So we're going to get into young earth, and we're going to get into carbon dating and how they fake the fact that the earth is probably 6,000 years old. It's probably not much older than that if it is. If it's 7, okay, it might be 7, but it's not that old. Just because dirt looks old doesn't mean the earth is old. There's just no proof of it being old. The written language only goes back about 4,000 years. A stone tablet, yeah, there was stone tablets, but there's no proof of how old they were. There's no proof of the age of the earth outside the written language. And understanding the earth as a dimensional field. You live in a realm. You don't live in outer space. The earth isn't floating through outer space. The earth is connected to a God's mind, and we won't recognize that. The earth is objective, and the earth is water, and the earth is land. There's a sun and the moon and a star above us creating a clock, and that creates our memories. That's how we remember things. That's really hard for people to understand. You can go back and try to remember your old memories. It lives in a calendar. It lives in Greenwich Mean Time. When the sun's in the sky at noon, that's how we archive time. And that's how we create our calendar. And we base it off of 12. That's not necessarily a Christian calendar. There's been multiple calendars throughout history. There's the Hebrew calendar. There's the Mayan calendar. We are under the Roman Greenwich Mean Time calendar. And it's far from perfect. It's not a very good calendar. But it does use the sun and the moon and the stars to make up time. And then that gives us memories. It's very hard to remember some things. It's easier to remember things that are very emotional. And then you'll remember where you were. And then you'll remember what happened. And then it helps to remember, the specific time. I'll use school, for example. Like when I was in the 3rd grade, I have my memories from the school years. And I don't remember how old I was then, to kind of archive where I was. And God's system is a very open system and an open garden. And the biggest point of understanding the creation story is just understanding that there's a creator. And because he's not inside his creation is of its seed. It's of its kind. We can hide it and we can steal it. And that's why everything gets so confusing and then so conspiratorial, because people know how it generally works, and then they tell a story so it comes from them, so it can reflect their desires and, their energy. So this is the first episode of, the creation story. We'll do the fall next, and then we'll get into, empires and Babylon and Mark of the Beast and end times and all, the big themes of the Bible. And the main theme of the Bible is that God is God and you're not God. And Jesus is the mediator to that God. And without Jesus, you can't see God. You can't reflect God's image. You just won't want to. God's just too powerful. God's creator. That thing I didn't answer in this episode, where does God come from? How does God create his creation? What exactly is God's creation as far as himself? As far as what is this thing he beamed to his creation? Trees are trees. Humans are humans. Fish are fish. Animals are animals. God doesn't say where they came from. He just says they come from him. And he won't let you know that. And we're going to get into that in the fall episode. The fall episode, the fall of man, the fall of humankind is doing that, is trying to answer that question. This is just saying, it's me and I'm not going to let you know. I'm not going to let you know because you're going to steal it from me. Now, NASA will say it comes from itself. It comes from you. And it comes from your spirit. God's saying, no, it comes from me. And now you have to connect to my spirit, but you can't do it because if you see my spirit, you're going to want to steal it. You're going to want to steal God's power. You're going to want to steal God's knowledge. You're going to want to steal God's brain. You're going to want to steal God's mind. God's mind is the thing that creates everything. And then it traps you not in his mind. It traps you in a creation. It traps you in a reflection of it. It traps you in a seas that's trapped in a crater, that's trapped in a sky, that's trapped in a light field with sun and moon and stars. And we are trapped in this box because we'll steal God's power if we know how God creates. We can recreate, and we want to create because we are made in God's image. We are made as beings of light and bearers of light like God. And we so badly want to do it. But because we'll just do it for ourselves and we won't do it for other people and we won't do it so we can have a creation that then gets to live in community with us and gets to reflect us in a way that doesn't make us better than God, we are stuck doing it this way. We can have children, and if you want to have children so you can boss your children around and be mean to your children, that's bad. Now, most people don't want to do that. Most people, think that they want to help their kids. But then there's people out there that don't want to have children because of that. And then they want to rule over other people's children. So they want to rule over your seed. So they create nations to rule over the children of this world, to rule over God's children and get the children, and to get God's children to do life through them, and then pay homage and pay sacrifice and pay energy back to them and distribute life to them and tax them and make them go to war for them and make them die for them and make them bleed for them. And they even steal their blood so they can have everlasting life. We'll get into that too in later episodes about blood magic and trying to find everlasting life through blood transfusions. And it all comes down to wanting to be better than other people. And there's people that think they genetically are, and they think they're allowed to steal blood from other people in order to do that. And that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy to me that people are like, yeah, they'll even admit it to you. I'll yell at people for Planned Parenthood and say, you're doing blood transfusions to have everlasting life, and I don't even think it works, and you're getting me to pay for it, and I don't think that's cool because you're doing it because you think you're better than me, and I don't want to have to give you my blood, and I don't have to pay for other people to give you their blood. Like, just don't have Planned Parenthood run through the tax system. Just have it, if you want to do it, you pay for it yourself. You do it through your doctor. And they freak out. They freak out when you tell them that's what they're doing. When you explain to them that they're trying to prove to you that you're better than them by tricking you, by getting you to pay for other people's blood. And they're like, yeah, we like that. No, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So, the Christian conspiracy, at first will just be a bunch of videos going through big themes of the Bible. And then maybe one day we'll have guests on, hopefully. And let me know if there's any topics or any takes I have that you want me to go through. And I would love to hear from you. And so, please subscribe and like the video and let me know what you're into and what you think about the Bible and what you think about the creation story. And if you think it's something else, let me know. I'd love to hear it. And until next time, this is the Christian Conspiracy. I'm the Daniel, a Christian conspiracy theorist. And we'll talk to you soon. All right.